So, last month is officially over, and that means it's time for a wrap up. Hi, hello, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Alex, and today is our April wrap up. Oh my gosh, April's over. I don't know where that went. So it's officially May. That's wild to me. May is always a really wild month for us. I know it's just like in the early days, but I can already feel like the pressure of May on my shoulder. Let's not think about that though, okay? Let's talk about the books I read in April. Now, I'm gonna warn you, I have a lot of opinions about at least two of these books that I read this month because, yeah, you'll see. Let's go over my rating system real quick. But before we do that, make sure you hit all the buttons down below so you know when I'm posting. I post every week. And all we do on this channel is talk about books. So if you like listening to people talk about books, here I am every week doing just that for you. Let's talk about my rating system. Okay, 5 stars. Obviously, the book is perfection. I absolutely loved it. I had no issues with it whatsoever, and I will happily and excessively recommend it to everybody. 4 stars means I really liked it, but I did have issues with it. That could be something as simple as I didn't like, the setting or the character descriptions, or the pace didn't work for me. But overall, I really liked the book, and I will recommend it to people if it falls within their specific genre that they like. 3 stars means I didn't like it. But the reason I didn't like it is not because it was poorly written or because it was a bad book or it had bad content. It was probably a subjectivity issue, which means this book was not intended for me. Like, I was not the target audience. Will I recommend it to people? Only if I know for sure that this is a book that they might like, but chances are pretty low that I'd recommend it. 2 stars. Fundamental issues, and I didn't like it. What do I mean about fundamental issues? It means that there were just major plot holes, major discrepancies. Also, I will give a book 2 stars if it has a lot of like racism, homophobia, appropriation, things like that. That's going to be a 2-star book, okay? And I will not recommend that to anybody. 1 star. Absolutely hated it. I regret spending any time reading it, and I will most likely never read anything by that author again. I mean, I have to really hate a book to give it 1 stars. Okay? I have given a few books 1 stars. If you want to know what they are, they're in this post up here. I'll link it or whatever, okay? Now, let's get into it, alright? What I read in April. First book I read in April was The Kiss Thief by L.J. Shen. Y'all, I read this book finally. If you've been on my channel a minute, you know I've been through it to get this book in my possession. I got it in my possession. I said I'm gonna read it, and I read it. And let me tell you how disappointed I was in this book. Oh my goodness. It was one of those things like, I had to work so hard to get this book. And then I read it and I was so disappointed. Okay, let's talk about it. So we have our main character, Francesca, and she's young. She's in an important, like, Chicago mob family, and she's deeply in love with her childhood sweetheart, who she's set to marry. And then, out of nowhere, her father's like, shoves her into this arranged marriage with a senator. And it ends up being like a deep undercurrent in the novel as to like why this happens. So I'm not gonna like spoil that or anything. So basically, she hates this man because he's basically ruined her life by like forcing her father to put her in an arranged marriage with him. They don't like each other, they don't get along, and she's constantly trying to figure out if she can get back together with her childhood sweetheart and get out of the situation that she's in. That's the setup of the novel, okay? Lots of really popular tropes in this book. They all happen to be tropes that I don't like. Which, like, this is what I mean when a subjectivity issue. This book was not meant for me because a lot of these tropes that are in this book are extremely popular, but they just happen to be ones that I don't like at all. I ended up giving this one 3 stars. It just wasn't for me. There was just a lot of game playing, which call me decrepit in my old age, but I just do not have the stamina anymore for how much gameplay was in this book. Like, everyone was on their own flippin' game board. Do you know what I mean? It just felt really kind of silly, and I just, after a while, it got kind of old hat for me. For how much the two of these people hated each other, I was really expecting like a lot more. You know what I mean? It just kind of was like childish a little bit. Like, I really wanted some action. I didn't really get it. There's an age gap in this book, which I actually found quite funny. Because they played into this age gap in such a weird way. Like, okay, I think she was 19, so she's not like underage, not like a minor or anything. And I think the senator was like 28 or 29. The age gap is not that big. Like, to put this into perspective, I was at the same time, like, reading a novel for a client, and there was a 30-year age gap in that book. So it's like, when you're comparing the two, this is like little fries, okay? Compared to a 30-year age gap. So there was a little age gap in this book, but the way that they played it made it seem like gross. Do you know what I mean? Like, they kept calling her like a child and like infantizing her when it's like, she's not. Like, I wouldn't consider 19 like an adult or whatever, like, but they're not a minor. She's not a child anymore. Like, she's consenting age. Like, I don't know. It just, the way that the wording was in this book really played into like her being like young, and it made it feel like kind of gross. And I was like, I'm not here for that. Do you know what I mean? It made me feel dirty for reading it. Spice level really low. I was really expecting way more, and I was just really disappointed in the setup for the spice. Like, again, it was another trope that I didn't really like. I'm not going to spoil that for you, but the trope around the spice was just not for me. Yeah. I was so upset because like I said, I've been waiting a really long time to get my hands on this book, and like, it's supposed to be kind of an enemies to lovers, which it does fall into that trope category. It was just not what I was wanting. It's not what I was wanting. But for a lot of other people, this book would really work. It just didn't work for me. The next book that I read in April was The Last Days of Jack Sparks by Jason Arnopp. If you've been here a minute, you know I've been like, this has been on multiple lists. I've been like eager to read it. I was excited about it. And yeah, this is one of those things where it's like, it got built up in my head and it disappointed me. So, I will say, this book was put together in a really cool way. Like, bonus points on like formatting and stuff, because this book was put together really cool. But that didn't fix the issues that I had with this book. Alright, premise. Jack Sparks is a journalist that writes books about like controversial experiments that he does. Doesn't really believe in the afterlife, doesn't believe in ghosts, doesn't believe in anything that's paranormal, right? So he decides to write a book that proves that none of that is real. Of course, this is going to be very controversial and stuff, but this is kind of his gag. He writes controversial stuff. So, the like opening is he goes and witnesses an exorcism. He makes fun of the exorcism, and then like it's like a week or so after that, he dies. And the idea of the book is that nobody knows how he dies until now. I will say, if you're going to read this book, you need to read the prologue, because it does a really good job of like kind of explaining the setup of the book, which, like I said, the setup of the book was actually pretty cool. So I will say right away, I was really into this book. Like, the opening was really delivering. I was sunk you right in. It was captivating. It was like kind of creepy, like paranormal creepy. It was really good. And then at the same time, we were kind of getting input from other characters along the way that were counterbalancing the unreliable narrator that is Jack Sparks. It was just really neat, okay? And then at like the halfway point, we stopped doing all of that stuff, and we were just with Jack for the rest of the book, and that's when it all just really tanked for me. The pace did not work. I felt like there were too many different ideas happening on the page at the same time. I felt like we just kept back burnering a lot of this stuff, and just were being told to like, oh, be patient and wait. And it was like, now the ending of the book, wow, like they wrapped it up in a really cool way. Like, but I needed way more in the wrap up. Like, we spent so much time on the lead up to the ending. That's like, when the ending happened, I promise, like, the ending was like maybe 30 pages, and it was like, I needed way more than that. Like, needed to like balance the scales a little bit more, because we were really top heavy on the front with a lot of stuff that didn't really work for me. And then, you know, at the end, when we were supposed to be getting like all of the, you know, pinnacle of the book, there was just very light, and the writing was just not there for me. I had a lot of page issues. I considered giving up on this book a bunch of times because I was running out of time to read it. Like, honestly, I was dragging myself through this book. I couldn't stay motivated to read it. I had so much trouble staying interested. And, yeah, I almost DNF'd it. Like, I will say, the concept of the book, really great. The ending of the book was really cool, like, the way that they decided to play it. But pretty much the meat of the book, just the pace didn't work for me. I was really expecting way more gore, way more paranormal writing, way more like creepy stuff, and it just didn't really work. The way that they wrote the first half of the book really worked for me, and then Jason Arnopp stopped writing the book that way at about the halfway mark, and I will honestly say that I think that was a mistake. So, I gave it 3 stars. Because a lot of people really liked this book. I don't know. I think I was just really expecting something different. But like I said, concept was cool. The formatting was pretty well done. And the ending was really surprising. I'm also extremely picky with my paranormal horror. And this just didn't tick enough boxes for me. So yeah. Okay, so by this point in the month, I was feeling pretty low. Like, okay, to put this in perspective, like, I read The Kiss Thief, like, right at the beginning of April, and got it done in, like, a couple days, and then I had to return it to the library because somebody else wanted it. Like I said, everybody wanted that book. It's on, like, constant need at my library, so I was even surprised that I got it. Anyway, I had to take it back. It took me over a week and a half to even pick up the Jack Sparks book because I was flooded with work, right? Then when I picked up the Jack Sparks book, like, time slowed down when I was reading that book. Like, I was dragging myself through it. And then by the time I was done with it, I was like, OMG, I only have like a week left. Maybe not even. I think it was like 5 days to read this book, Wild and Wicked Things, by Francesca May. This was my book club book too, so I was like, I had to read it. Like, and I was like, oh man, I'm gonna have to rush through it. She's kind of thick, okay? This one actually delivered for me though, which was like really great because I'd kind of had a stinker of a month up until then. Like, The first two books in the month were really just kind of lackluster for me. And this book was on the thicker side, and I was already kind of nervous about it. I talked about it in the April maybes about being nervous about this book. So like I did not have time to struggle through it. You know what I mean? Like I didn't have that kind of time. Luckily I didn't have to struggle through it. So, premise of this book. It is post World War One. And magic is illegal. Annie finds herself on Crow Island for two reasons. She's looking for her friend that ran off there about a year ago, and she's there to settle her dead father's estate. And she ends up getting sucked into a world of magic and romance and murder. Okay? Like the premise, really good. I was nervous about this book because I don't typically read period pieces, and since this is post-World War One, I was kind of nervous about reading it. Didn't faze me at all. Since it's like a magical realism book, like I didn't really feel the agedness to it. You know, there wasn't a lot of that in there. I was able to get through it fairly easy. The vibes were all here. Very like dark, feminine, magic vibes, like divine feminine energy, that kind of vibe. Sapphic romance. And it just had this like aura to it, like a breath to it, if you know what I mean. And I really, really liked it. Now, I ended up giving it 4 stars because I think it was about 100 pages too long. There were just some bits that is like, I was skimming because I was like, we just don't really need it, you know? So it was about 100 pages too long for me. But other than that, I really liked it. Like, if you like practical magic, this book, yes. And then if you like Sawkill girls, this is like, for me, it had Sawkill all grown up. So there was a lot of like, you know how, I mean, if you've read Sawkill Girls, you know there's like a deep undercurrent to that story of a lot of like lore, folklore, and like ancestry and stuff. And that played a really big role in this book too. Like there was a really dark undercurrent there of like witch lore and ancestry and things like that. It had a lot of really cool elements that tied together very nicely. And the ending was just, I mean, there's a lot of sadness in this book. There's a lot of pain in this book, but I think it was really, really well done. So yeah, if you can kind of like deal with the heavy-handedness of it, it really delivered for me. So yeah, that's all I have for you guys today. Sorry it wasn't like as exciting. I mean, I told you guys last week that I was gonna have a lot to say, and I feel like I did have a lot to say for a wrap-up. For a wrap-up that was only 3 books, I felt like I talked a lot. I'm excited about May. I'm excited about my lineup for May that I've already kind of settled. I'm excited about all the things that my family is doing in May. Like I said, May is always really kind of busy for us, and it's just gonna be busy. I've already been busy with work and stuff, so yeah, we'll just see. We'll just see. Like, for any of you guys that suffer from like the winter blues or seasonal depression, like I do suffer from that, and I finally feel like I'm becoming myself again. Do you know what I mean? Like I feel like that is finally like moving on for a little bit, and I just feel better every day. I feel more every day. So hopefully that's the same for you. And I'm actually looking forward to the summer. I'm looking forward to everything. So yeah. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!